Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. In episode 160, I talked about a particular type of cognitive distortion called emotional reasoning, in which our brains tell us that the way we feel about things is the way things are. And of course, that's not always true, and it's a mental mistake that can cause a lot of pain. You can find episode 160 at reconnectionclub.com/160. Today, I'll discuss two more cognitive distortions that might be adding suffering to the pain of estrangement from your adult child or children. The first cognitive distortion, or mental mistake, is overgeneralization. When we overgeneralize, essentially we paint everything with the same brush, making a large-scale, usually negative, pattern out of a single occurrence. For instance, if your estranged adult child points to a certain interaction that you now view in retrospect as a parenting mistake, then if you tend to overgeneralize, you might start worrying that you were a bad parent in general. Or you might hear that same complaint and think, nothing I do is ever good enough. Or you might find yourself feeling resentful about it, like, why is everything always my fault? A big clue that overgeneralization might be at work is if you often use the words always or never when processing negative information. One more overgeneralization would be when an unwillingly estranged parent thinks, I tried apologizing, but the estrangement didn't end, so therefore, nothing I do will work. Those are all examples of drawing a conclusion from one incident and applying it globally. Overgeneralization could keep you from responding effectively to estrangement. Instead of evaluating the available facts individually, the overgeneralizing mind leaps to identify a broader pattern of failure in the relationship. And that could easily bog you down in hopelessness, despair, and resentment, instead of allowing the responsiveness that might be needed to make repairs. Overgeneralization may have roots in earlier experiences, starting in childhood. If it feels like nothing you do is ever good enough, for example, you might have been overblamed or underappreciated as a child. Or you might simply have felt inadequate early and often in your life. Overgeneralization is also associated with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. If you suspect you may have trauma, please consult a local trauma specialist for treatment. But to combat, let's say, garden variety overgeneralization that creates unnecessary emotional pain for many of us in the normal course of events, we need to be able to recognize when we're doing it. One fantastic antidote to cognitive distortion is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. A local counselor or therapist can use CBT to help you identify and challenge harmful overgeneralizations that may be not only hurting you, but also getting in the way of your being able to respond the way you'd want to sometimes in relationships. Therapists who use CBT should be very easy to find in the U.S., and perhaps elsewhere as well. The second cognitive distortion I'd like to touch on today is called catastrophizing. And basically, that means assuming the worst. If your estranged adult child stops responding to texts or emails at all, a catastrophizing mindset will suggest all sorts of horrifying thoughts. Maybe they're furious with you, they don't care at all about the relationship, and they'll never speak to you again. Or maybe something terrible has happened to them and they can't respond. To not receive a response at all from an adult child who is estranged is a trigger for most of the parents I meet with. Virtually nobody I talk to believes their child's silence to be benign. The looming catastrophe that haunts the unwillingly estranged parent is, of course, the fear of losing their child forever. And let me be clear, of course, that would be devastating. But assuming that that's what their silence means, in the vast majority of cases I've seen, it's an unfounded fear. For several alternative explanations of your child's silence, listen to episode 20 at reconnectionclub.com/20. Now again, it would be a personal disaster if you did lose your child forever. That's not the cognitive distortion. The distortion is the belief that that's what is happening. And that belief that you've lost your child forever may unfortunately be triggered multiple times during an estrangement. It's as though there are exactly two types of developments during estrangement from the parent's point of view: developments that mean you've lost your child forever, and positive signs which indicate that maybe you haven't lost them forever yet. Most of the time, in reality, the stakes are not quite as high as they may feel on your side of things. It's not uncommon for estranged adult children to tell parents, "Hey, I love you, I just need time, I'll be back when I'm ready." Catastrophizing parents completely ignore that information. Instead, they continue to feel and act as if the relationship is falling off a cliff. Many parents with a tendency to catastrophize have experienced staggering losses in their lives. They know how bad things can get, and their nervous systems are primed for another catastrophe. It seems deeply unfair to me that people who have already been through so much have to carry a burden of continuing fear and anxiety. To help correct the faulty thinking of catastrophizing and be able to soothe unnecessary suffering, you could institute a regular practice of physical and mental relaxation. It's hard to calm your mind when your body is tense and vice versa, but you can harness the reciprocal connection between body and mind to reduce tension in both. Keep cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, in mind as well. It can help you overcome both overgeneralizing and catastrophizing, as well as other cognitive distortions that send the brain and body into chronic stress. I'll put a link in the show notes to a good book or two about this, and I'll also link to some online directories where you can search for a therapist who uses CBT. The pain of estrangement is real, and it can be intense. But although some painful feelings may be unavoidable, cognitive distortions like overgeneralizing and catastrophizing can make everything seem even worse. So, as they used to say in the old days of videotape movie rentals, be kind, rewind. Play back those negative thoughts and remove the cognitive distortions when you play them again. Your nervous system will thank you for embracing a more realistic and balanced view. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please, take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out ReconnectionClub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at ReconnectionClub.com.